Okay, I'm here today with Professor Russell Bishop, who we've had the privilege of hearing speak today, and I get to take him for a little tiki tour around our wonderful town Timaru and pick his brains as we go. So, welcome.
Thank you.
In chapter 8 of your book, you spoke about visiting 2 schools, can't go that way, in Canada, and observing teaching in action. Now, one of them had obviously some really great success in the engagement and attendance, etc. of the pupils, and the other one was less successful. So with the much more successful class, in a nutshell, what were the key elements that led to that success?
The key elements, I think, was the support that was wrapped around the young teacher. It was only her first year of teaching, towards the end of the year. She was an incredibly competent teacher and she was having a great time. She was really enjoying it. She wanted to stay on, she told me later, and become a teacher. She was so enamoured with the whole job. But the key to it was the support that the principals and her co-teachers gave. They helped her with the planning, they helped her with the assessment practices, they helped her with class management, they helped her with everything. They helped her to develop a family-like context in her classroom. They helped her learn how to interact within that context with the students, and they helped her with monitoring her practice, and the impact of her practice on the outcomes in the class, and so modify her practice as a result.
Fantastic, wraparound support.
It was the total of wraparound support that did the job.
So my next question is kind of a little along those lines. How important would you say that teachers do work and plan collaboratively, but not just that, how important is it that the teachers themselves have good, positive working relationships together?
Oh, well, it's probably the research that John Hattie's done, for example, shows quite clearly that it's the most effective things that teachers can do. If you really want to make a difference for achievement, collaborate, work together, and work together using the evidence of student performance to see how you can make a difference, to collaboratively determine how you can improve your practice to improve their performance.
Fantastic, that makes a lot of sense.
Yes.
So if you
But again, you need to be supported to do that.
Yes.
And the school needs to have some structural changes so that teachers can do that you don't just throw it onto teachers and say, okay, you guys do it. You actually throw it onto the school to say, you make it happen.
Right, and the responsibility lies there with the school.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So if you could give one piece of advice to a new graduate teacher starting out in their career, what would that be?
Interview the school very carefully that you're intending to work in, and to see what sort of systems they have to support new teachers, and identify if the teachers are acting as what we call instructional leaders rather than administrative leaders. If they're administrative, you will be on your own. If they're instructional, you'll be in a support network.
That's really, really good advice. So to what extent does a teacher's belief in the student's potential to achieve well, to what extent does it affect the student's belief in their own ability to achieve?
Well, it's probably the primary impact, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, if the teachers have a negative attitude towards young people, and if they have a negative understanding of the potentiality of the students, they'll transfer that to the teachers. A lot of research to show, for example, that expectations have a major impact upon students' outcomes.
Expectations, yes.
Teacher expectations.
Yep.
Whether teachers care for the learning of students has a major impact. All these things are very well founded in good empirical research.
Fantastic. Now, thinking about students from different cultures, in what ways will providing familiar contexts for learning help them to feel confident in their work and their interactions in the class?
This is a very important issue, in that what creates a culturally responsive context for learning, or a culturally responsive pedagogy, is when teachers actually create a context where young people can bring themselves into the conversation that is learning. They can bring their prior knowledge, and they can bring their experiences, and they can actually articulate how they make sense of the world in relationship to what the teachers are trying to teach. And if people can bring their own sense-making practices to the interaction, the conversation that is learning, It's got to be a conversation for a starter. Can't just be a one way.
No.
But if the conversation that is learning deliberately enables young people to bring who they are, how they make sense of the world, then you're creating a culturally responsive context for learning.
Right, and you're going to have a lot more success with that student. Yeah.
You certainly will.
Great. Now, just thinking about your book, I've only read chapter 8, but I'm very interested to read more.
Good.
And your other book as well. Whereabouts can people find a copy of your book?
I think it's probably at the probably most academic bookstores have got it, but NZCER have got it. You can access it online. You can even get a Kindle version of it.
Oh, fantastic.
Which is much cheaper again and much easier to access, Although I like a book, I like to be able to get into a book and write on it and everything, don't you?
Yes, yeah.
So
a real book.
NZCER, New Zealand Council for Educational Research, they're the ones that have them.
That's really good, thank you. And just thinking about the pōwhiri, what were your thoughts on the pōwhiri this morning?
I thought it was outstanding. As I said, when I started at Otago University 30 years ago, I would never have seen a pōwhiri of that competence, if you like.
Right.
Of that, no, I don't mean competence in the sense, I'm not trying to say that they were incompetent 30 years ago, just that they weren't as proficient 30 years ago. The proficiency of the speakers was very evident today.
It was, wasn't it?
And the other thing is that the institution allowed it to happen. I mean, 30 years ago, I don't know that would have happened at that school, but now it's happening as a matter of course. It's very much a part of the way things are being done in schools now in New Zealand. It's wonderful.
It
really,
is.
really wonderful.
It is, and it's a real positive and celebrated event, really. Any of these cultural experiences are, and that's certainly a big turnaround to the way that it used to be.
Exactly. Oh yes, it's wonderful. I mean, celebrating diversity is what we're doing, and then celebrating the diversity that's provided by the indigenous population of New Zealand, which has been overlooked for so long. It's so valuable and it's so much, makes life much more interesting, for goodness sake, for the majority culture people, and it really boosts the esteem of the indigenous population to have that opportunity.
Yeah, and it's just becoming a lot more normalised, and so it should really, that we're speaking te reo in schools and having these cultural experiences, and that's heartwarming, really.
It is, isn't it?
It sure is.
Yeah. I was really heartened by the whole event. Really, it was fabulous.
Now, you're obviously very passionate about relationships and all of these things that you speak about. Would it be fair to say it's your life's work?
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Oh yes, easily. Oh yes, very much so.
What would have been one of your first experiences of cultural, well, when were you first, I guess I'll just rephrase the question, when did you first become aware and interested in the difference in the education of Māori students versus European students?
When I first started teaching,
yeah.
I couldn't believe that Māori kids were not achieving at the same level as non-Māori. And I couldn't believe that most of the teachers told me it was because the kids weren't up to much. And yet I knew the families, I knew the kids, and they were up to much. They were up to quite a lot. I was bemused. I thought, why is this happening?
Yeah.
And it's sort of social justice. I mean, there's those issues as well. And there's also, when I looked, I did a big family reunion project when I did my masters. And I looked into the diaspora, or the dispersal of my mother's family around New Zealand. And they were Maori people, and one of them ended up in the South Island, and that was my grandfather. And when I went to track these people down, he had left behind a clue to track them down, and the clue he had left was with my mother. Her name was Doris Hinepo Irahapiti Makai. And Irahapiti was his mother, and Hinepo was her mother. We never knew that until I went back I used those names to go back to Ngāti and to Tainui, and that led me back to find all, when we had the family reunion, we had something like 6,000 descendants.
Wow, that's
6,000 relatives, so it's a massive family.
Massive, yeah.
An enormous family in the North Island and the South Island of New Zealand. But what I noticed was that those members of the family who were living as Māori were not as wealthy as those members of the family who were living as Pākehā.
Right.
And I thought, well, we're all the same. We're all from the same gene pool. How come?
Exactly, yeah.
How come? How come you can't have a whole group of people just because they live as Māori are suddenly become dumber than another group of people?
It doesn't make sense.
Doesn't make any sense.
No.
Doesn't make any sense.
Yep.
So it never made any sense to me.
Yeah, and that's where it started for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, it looks like we've reached our destination. So I want to thank you very much for coming along for a little drive with me today. And yeah, I look forward to reading more of your work. Thank you
very much. Wonderful.